Oh man, this is exciting for me personally. We have a very special guest today on the show. This is someone who, back during my Orlando days, guys, when Disney cut back my hours, I listened to MLB radio a ton, and this gentleman was right over here, Mr. Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, was
Yeah.
one of the voices of that station back then. So really cool. This is where I used to get my baseball news.
Yeah.
Back before every team had 9 personalized blogs and 400 podcasts, you had to
Right.
listen to the mainstream radios, and this is one of the main guys. So I'm super excited. Lee, how are things on the West Coast?
Gentlemen, good evening. Nice to be with you. Glad we could hook this up. Technology is
Thank you.
great, unless you don't know how to use technology, but I'm glad we could do this.
Absolutely.
No,
Yeah.
as
Thank
am I,
you.
man. This is super cool. And by the way, Brian, I promise you, I did not bring Lee on just to mess with you, because Brian's a Jets fan, and I know that Lee is very closely associated with the Chargers, who just
Yeah. Was wondering if we could talk about that after Phil's got some questions. Get into that a little bit.
No, we can do. I mean, it's free for him, man. Lee, if you want to rip on Brian and rub it in, feel free.
JETS, Jets, junk. Thank you.
I've never heard that
nice,
one
nice
before.
to be
I
with you.
never heard that either. That's
That's awesome.
I've done
Yeah.
sports talk radio for a long time, and yes, I did 3 years at Sirius XM in its early stages with the Home Plate channel. Longtime friendship, working relationship with Mad Dog Chris Russo, and that's how it started. So I've been out here on the West Coast a long time. I did sports talk radio for 28 years at 2 of the biggest stations in the nation, and was the voice of the Chargers and the Seattle Seahawks. And as our industry has changed, as you guys know, here's the brown envelope, sign your name, clean out your desk. As the industry has changed, I gravitated towards TV, and I've been doing TV sports anchor work in San Diego. And then I started a podcast, which has just exploded. And now I'm doing Instagrams, and I have a huge website that's all written. And in lieu of you paying me $100,000 to do this interview tonight, I'll just instead of taking your money, I'll just promote the fact if you like sports on the East Coast, I'm an East Coast guy. I grew up on Long Island. I'm from New York, even though I'm on the West Coast. Check my website. It's all written. You'll really like it. I think it's leehacksawhamilton.com. I write on it every day. And then there's a link to my podcast. I do an hour podcast on Mondays and Thursdays, and then Instagram stuff, etc. So that's my background in lieu of the $100,000 retainer. Now let's talk sports. You guys can just pick topics, and we'll go for 15 or 20 minutes.
And by the way, definitely
great
check him
name
out.
too,
Like,
by
this
the way.
is, yeah.
Actually,
listen,
it's really good.
My
There you go.
my hoodie's better than your hoodie. Up in Northport, out on the island.
I like it. I
love it. So there we go. So you're on the West Coast now. Let's talk a little bit of West Coast sports. Now, in between the time that I emailed you to try to get you on the show and now, there's been a lot of you wouldn't call it the coaches carousel in baseball. I don't know if it'd be like managerial musical chairs, or I don't know what the term would be officially, but the Mets obviously hired a manager. A couple other teams have, but the Padres, who you cover, as of an hour ago, I was hearing different names, but no one's been hired yet. We've heard Phil Nevin. We've heard a couple other outside names, possibly an internal promotion. What are you hearing out there, Lee, for the Padres? Who's going to be the man with the bench?
Phil, there's about 4 names out there, but that can constantly change because AJ Preller, the general manager, constantly changes the way he's doing his business. I think a guy that's moved to the forefront is David Ross, who just got tossed by the Chicago Cubs in kind of a surprise move. They need a leader. They need an intelligent guy. They need a younger guy to, identify with the players. So I think Dave Ross has not been interviewed yet, but I know he's been discussed in the inner sanctum at Petco Park. In the organization, they got Mike Schilt, who had 3 good years in St. Louis before he was bounced out of there because he feuded with the analytical people, and John Maziliak. They did interview Phil Nevin. I'm not sure if that was for a manager's job or maybe the bench coach job on a new baseball staff. AJ Preller, the general manager, is really unorthodox as to the way he conducts his business now. So he's got a managerial situation, and he's about to hire his 5th manager since he took over 9 years ago. There's not been a lot of stability here, but he's got the left hand. He's got a manager and a coaching staff he has to solve. The right hand, he's got a roster full of problems, and he's still at the general managers meetings in Scottsdale through tomorrow in Arizona. And he's got to deal with a Juan Soto situation. He's got to deal with the loss of his top starting pitcher, his potential loss of his top reliever. They have at least 5 pitching vacancies now on the staff because of free agents, guys that are exiting, and guys that did not pick up the options on. And the whole team underachieved during the course of the season. So it was a miserable end to a season that came with high expectations, and then the falling out with Bob Melvin and the decision to let him go to the San Francisco Giants. But there may be some more names that have surfaced, and as I've said, Preller just marches to the beat of a different gun. He never sleeps. I've never seen a guy operate. You text at 3:00 in the morning, or I was at the winter baseball meetings his first year. He was making trades at 2 a.m. and calling press conferences at 3 a.m. in the hotel lobby.
Wow.
It was the most phenomenal thing I've ever experienced.
That's a night owl. That's my kind of guy right there. So I do want to piggyback
and
off
you
of
know
one
what?
thing. Oh, sorry.
You know what? He's a New York guy. I don't know if a lot of fans know that. You guys know he's from Huntington Station out on the island. So
How about that?
He's one of you guys.
That would make sense that he's up late and trying to get stuff done and constantly jittery and whatnot. So I want to piggyback one thing you just said, Lee, which was that the Padres have been underachievers for the last several years, in spite of having, in my opinion, they've got like a lineup of generational talent. Like they really do. You got, Machado and Tatis Soto, all these guys, these big bats, these big names. So as far as a managerial vacancy goes, do you see them kind of bringing in somebody a little more tougher, a little more disciplined to try to harness that talent? Or is it going to be something more along the lines of something else you just said, which was somebody a little more analytically driven, or a mixture of the two? What's your thoughts on that?
They've gone through a whole myriad of managers. When AJ came here in 2014, he inherited Bud Black, who's got a pretty good reputation, and he fired him. And then he hired Andy Green, who had no managerial experience at ever, gave him a couple of 3 years, and then he removed him. And then he hired Jace Tingler, who had 0 experience, but had worked in the organization. 2 years into that, gone. And then he hired Bob Melvin. And I thought he hit a home run with Bob Melvin, because Melvin had done so many good things in so many sets of circumstances, be it what he accomplished in Texas, what he did with no money and young players in Oakland, was just what he did up in Seattle. And manager of the year 3 times. I thought, this is a home run hire. And it just didn't work out. And I think my rationale is the landscape of baseball has drastically changed, and that players are running clubhouses now, not managers.
Oh, yeah.
And there were big issues here with AJ Preller and his analytics interfering with Bob Melvin on anything and everything, from lineups to bullpens to who pinch hits, etc. And he became robo-manager, and that's not the way Melvin wanted to do business. Now, to Melvin's credit, he didn't blow his lid. Now, I'm sure there were some pretty stormy meetings during the course of the season. So they got to the end of the season, and the stories started to leak out. And I don't know if you guys are aware, there were 2 big stories that happened the last week of the baseball season out here in San Diego. 32 people, players, former players, staff members, ex-staff members, and executives that the Athletic and the Union Tribune newspapers contacted to try to get anonymous reaction to what the hell happened in San Diego. 32 people criticized Preller and his analytics department for interfering, and criticized the players for not being consummate teammates.
That's something that we go through here in New York as well, because there's been a lot of talk of Aaron Boone, of course, the Yankees manager. People saying, "Oh yeah, he doesn't actually manage games. It's the guys upstairs who are just kind of who are actually running the games." And so it sounds like there's a similar kind of thing going on in San Diego. Am I off base saying that, or
no? I think that was the rationale as to why Melvin said, "I'm done," and he walked away from a $4 million contract to go to a San Francisco team that's got no players, and is facing a massive overhaul of their roster. So it was really a tough finish, and nobody expected this. And then collectively, I've been in that clubhouse. Those players act like independent contractors. There is no Philadelphia esprit de corps. You look at the Phillies and how they played, look at what the Rangers became. I never saw any of that in the Padres clubhouse, nor on the field. And, in Preller's 9 years here, this is the most mind-boggling thing. His ownership has given him a blank check, and he's outspent it. He has signed so many players, so many draft picks, so many international free agents. He's overpaid on virtually everybody. And at the end of the day, they haven't won bleep. In 9 years, they've had 3 months of good baseball. A year ago this fall, they had the push to the playoffs and they beat the Dodgers. That's
Which
all
was
they've
big.
done in 9 years. And he's still got the job. So it's a strange set of circumstances. I think he's on the clock. I think he's got 1 year left. And the other problem is they're going to cut payroll. They're going to go from 253 down to 200 this year.
I wanted to ask about that.
They had the majority owner who's got health issues. I think that's a piece of this equation. So what was Padre baseball right now is not going to be Padre baseball next season. And he's got to deal with Soto and he's got to deal with Scott Boras. Like I said,
right.
there's
I was
so many
just gonna get into
Yeah.
that. So let me ask you a question, because I follow obviously baseball pretty closely. This map behind me is the stadiums I've visited so far. I'm over half at this point. And San Diego, by the way, beautiful park. So, but here's the thing: the Padres, for the people who don't know this, they were the number 3 team in attendance last year, behind the Dodgers and Yankees. So my question is, how come they can't afford more of these players? They have a packed stadium every night. Just about
TV deals, is it?
Yeah. Is it the local TV broadcasting rights? What's the hang up here? Why are the Padres, who were doing all this spending, all of a sudden kind of hitting the brakes when they do have very, very good attendance numbers?
Yeah.
What's the marketplace population of New York? Huge.
Yeah.
Okay. Marketplace population, Los Angeles, monsters. San
Right.
Diego's this big, 3.2 million. That's it. They don't draw from Mexico. They're not drawing north of Camp Pendleton because that's Dodger and Angel territory. They don't draw very much in the Inland Empire. So that's the marketplace. Now, they've raised their ticket prices, guys, 38% in 3 years.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
Wow.
So there was such excitement this past year that they signed all these free agents, these mega multi-year contract extensions. They made the trade for Soto. We got Yu Darvish. We developed Joe Musgrove. We got the closer of the year in Josh Hader. And then Blake Snell had a Cy Young Award type season. They thought, okay, everybody was all in. That's how they sold out 61 games at Petco Park. But the big issue is then they underachieved. The big issue is now they've asked the fans for another price hike for a third straight year. And they grossly overspent. I mean, their payroll was 253. When you add in benefits, their total tax number is 296 million. They owe baseball about 30 million in December for going over the luxury tax for the third year in a row. And there's all kinds of penalties when you're over the luxury tax. Just ask Steinbrenner at Yankee Stadium, which is
we know
why they got under the tax, why the Dodgers got under the tax. So it's just a different market, and I think they've stretched the market dollar as far as they can go. Now they're going to reel the payroll back in. The worst thing that Preller's done is that he gave mega contracts with long terms. Nobody that I know of, with the exception of maybe Aaron Judge and Garrett Cole's contract, nobody that I know is given anybody contracts of 10, 11, 12, and 14 years. AJ Preller did that. Now he's boxed in with players who are going to be 30 years old and plus, and he can't trade the contracts because of the term, the length of the contracts. He's put them in a really bad corner. And now, he knew when he traded for Juan Soto and he traded 6 for 1, he traded half the farm system to get him. He knew he was trading for Juan Soto, but he also knew he was trading for Scott Boras. And we know how that all works out. Boras always takes his guys.
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about Soto.
So there's just so many complex problems in San Diego. We're not the only one. Up the road here, we got an Angel franchise that is dysfunctional squared. It's unbelievable. And then beyond that, you got the Dodgers, who have saved their money, and most everybody thinks they're going to be the team that's going to get Ohtani, but the Dodgers have to go get pitching, and their payroll is going to rocket into the 250s with Ohtani when they get him. Now, how are you going to go get more pitching? Because the Dodgers right now have such an injury situation with their staff, and in essence, the suspension of Julio Reyes, who's gone, the left-handed pitcher that was like 21-4 a year ago. So the Dodgers got a lot of young arms, but they're not ready for the major league. So I'm covering a lot of baseball here on
No, no,
your
no.
show on the East
I
Coast.
love
Perfect.
this.
There's so much going on here. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and this is kind of an odd, already 48 or 72 hours in after the exclusivity deadline expired. Lots happened, certainly. Now, Ohtani, as far as he goes, I personally think he's going to the Giants, but that's a whole other conversation about that. But you did mention Juan Soto, and I know we only have you for a couple more minutes, so I do want to talk about this for sure. Now, a lot of the rumor mill has him going to obviously a bigger market team. The Yankees and the Mets are obviously always attached to every single rumor, every single offseason, obviously. I'm not sure if this is going to be as easy of a trade as people think it's going to be because of something you mentioned, which was the Boris situation. Because right now he's got a year left in his contract, if I'm not mistaken. You have to trade for and give up a bunch of farm pieces, and then also pending an extension. And so you have to do kind of two fronts at once if you're trading for Juan Soto, which is not the easiest thing in the world. So I'm not 100% confident he's gonna get traded, unless Boris was bluffing when he said San Diego intends on keeping him. Do you have any general thoughts on that? On if you think it was a bluff or what the
on our screen here, there's 4 boxes. You and your 2 partners and me.
Right.
Yeah.
That's about the number of potential markets that could make a deal for Soto.
Mhm.
Because you're going to have to trade a plethora of young prospects and maybe 1 or 2 established major leaguers to get Soto.
Mhm.
But B, you got to be in the marketplace, whether it's Yankee Stadium, Fenway Park, maybe Dodger Stadium, maybe San Francisco. You got to be in the marketplace that can afford the kind of contract that it's going to be, which is $30 million to begin with, to escalating to $40 million and maybe some opt-out clauses along the way. So just like there's just 4 boxes here on this podcast, there's probably only legitimately 4 or 5 teams that could take him on. Now, that doesn't mean that AJ Preller doesn't move him. Preller's statement at the general manager's meetings was, I will make an offer. I want to sign him. If we can't sign him, we will then move to the next box, which means we will take trade offers. Now, my theory is you're charging these fans unbelievable amounts of money in a small market to go see Padre baseball. I would keep the guy. I'd see if he could drive you into the pennant race next year, to go with Machado and to go with Bogarts and Fernando Tatis and Ha-Seong Kim. If he can drive you into the playoffs, then you keep him for 1 more season. Now, if you're faltering next year, you could still flip him. Maybe you won't get as much. You could still flip him and you say goodbye to him. And therefore, you've had 3 rentals with him. They traded for him 3 years ago with the idea he put him in 3 pennant races. He and his teammates have not yet really delivered on that. But there's just a limitation as to who's going to be interested, who can afford Soto. Nobody's going to trade him on 1-year rental. If the Yankees go get him or the Mets go get him, it will be because they're going to sign him. And again, that's big market, big apple, so they can afford to sign him, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. Absolutely. And by the way, just one other quick aside here. I do think the Yankees are actually a fairly natural trade partner with the Padres right now because you mentioned the scarcity of pitching. The Yankees actually do have several young pitchers. So I could see 2 starters going back to the Padres, obviously with other pieces as well, if that deal does get done. I mean, there's King, there's Schmidt, there's a guy, Drew Thorpe, in the minors as well. These are all guys who, if the Padres really just need warm bodies and got to shed that payroll, could be potential targets for the Padres.
I'm not taking your
obviously,
phone call unless you're putting Gleyber Torres in that deal.
So you think Torres is part of it as well?
I think he has to be because they need established guys coming back. They don't need some AAA guy at Scranton Wilkes-Barre. They need a couple of established guys and then a load of prospects to make it happen. They traded 6 players to get him out of Washington.
Yeah.
So
right.
So I mean, the price would be obviously a little lower now because he's only got a year left. But no, I think you're right. I think it would be Torres probably with 2 starters and then possibly another couple of lottery ticket prospects on top of that.
I would do that deal.
And then also on top of that as well, do you see there being potentially a salary dump involved as well? Like the Padres trying to package in like a Cronenworth or somebody else like that just to make the receiving team eat more money. Do you think it'd be that kind of trade or no?
No, I don't think the receiving teams want to take on guys with $10 million contracts hitting 230. And Jake, as much as I like Jake's
Yeah.
had two down cycle offensive seasons, and I like him, but I think that Major League Scouting reports have figured out where the holes in his game are, and he, as good as he is defensively, $10 million on I think they gave him an 8-year contract. Another one of AJ's "why'd you do that" deal. They gave him an extended contract, so that's where it is. I don't think anybody wants Cronenworth at that price, and again, it's hard for me to put in place what the pecking order is. Is it get a decision made on Soto first, or is it go in the marketplace and go get pitching, because they need at least 2 starters. They have one starter in Darvish coming off elbow surgery. The second starter, Joe Musgrove, missed a third of the season with shoulder capsule surgery. Blake Snell is gone. I hear to St. Louis possibly, or San Francisco.
Wow.
But again, that's a Boris client, so who knows where that's going to end.
No, exactly.
Those are the top. Excuse me, top 3 starters. The next 3 starters all opted out of their contracts. They're all free agents, and they want $16 million apiece. And I just don't think the Padres can afford, with the budget cut coming, to pay starters 4, 5, and 6 $16 million apiece. And Josh Hader's vacated the premises too. So what was an exciting time in baseball has become a very uncertain time in San Diego baseball right now, just because of the roster makeup. But like I say, out here on the West Coast, we're dealing with fiasco in Anaheim, and then obviously waiting to see when the Dodgers drop anchor and start writing checks who they're going to get. Because the one thing I'll say about this, the Dodger way, it's pretty impressive. They got credentials, whereas a bunch of these other teams really don't.
Yeah.
That's it. All right, so guys, I don't want to keep you all night, Lee. I could talk hours about all these things, but any last questions for Mr. Hacksaw over here?
Yeah, come on, Jet fans, stand up and sound off. I heard you screaming last weekend.
Well, I actually because I was just looking at just Twitter right now in regards to like a bunch of trade rumors, and I didn't know this, but I guess the Mets are thinking about potentially trading Pete Alonso, and they have like the Cubs, the Mariners, and the Giants as likely destinations. So I don't know what your opinion was of that, if the Mets should keep Pete Alonso, or if he's probably
a little audio cop out there, but I think he saw where he's going with that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what I've heard is that Stearns has already said at the GM meetings, might have been this morning or this afternoon, Peter Alonso is not being traded. So that's the end of that discussion. Yeah,
that would be great.
And I know social media is great. Just understand who's writing what and who are they? Are they in my garage or your basement and they're writing about trade rumors, or is it a legitimate media guy? That's what you have to pay attention to. But Stearns had, I think he might have said it this afternoon, that Alonso is not going to be traded.
Yeah. Well, I guess Mike, I also have another quick. Oh, sorry.
Brian,
go ahead, Brian. Brian, go ahead.
I had another quick question, because we were talking about Carlos Mendoza getting hired, and like a lot. You go on social media and like pull a lot of Mets fans, and they act like they want to join like a suicide cult. They're so upset about Carlos Mendoza getting picked up. So I know, but Phil, we were talking about it. He thinks it's actually a good decision, because
I'm being a Yankee homer, but
even being like, second charge to like Aaron Boone, because Aaron Boone got ejected so much. So I guess, do you think that's a good option for the Mets to basically pick up Mendoza?
Well, Mendoza's been in baseball a long time, has served responsibly in a couple different roles and positions. So the Mets must have just had some really unique insight that this is the next guy that can kind of carry us. What the Mets need more than a new manager, I was not in favor of them blowing Buck out. They need health, and the reason you had a ratty season in New York, whether it was Yankees or Mets, we had a ratty season here because guys underachieved, all of them. The reason you're got a scowl on your face is you guys had so many injuries. I mean, the whole bleeping Yankees pitching staff was on IL, with the exception of Garrett Cole. And then how many games combined did Judge and Stanton miss? That's a big issue. And for Met fan over there on the left, the reality is you never got out of spring training healthy. World Baseball Classic screwed you, and it just went downhill from that point on. I mean, the injuries wrecked those two teams, and return to health is one. And obviously, when the Mets decided everybody leaves. When Cohen decided he was going to trade Verlander and Scherzer, that opened up the checking account. I mean, he's going to be a big time player in some form of free agency. So those teams will come back because they got the resources and wherewithal to do it. And last year was it was an aberration because of all the injuries.
All right, Mike, you got one last one for Lee? We're a little over the time.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. You did answer a lot of my questions in the discussion about Soto and also speaking of the analytics problems that a lot of teams are having. The only thing I would like to bring up in this last minute here is I grew up a Dave Winfield guy, and I know he went to the Hall of Fame as a Padre over the Yankees. What has he meant to the organization since his retirement and going to the Hall of Fame as a Padre, and how has he been involved in the community in San Diego?
He really hasn't, in all honesty. He's
really
kind of he's out and about. He does a lot of things business-wise. Doesn't have a presence in San Diego. Doesn't even live here.
Really?
And he was just a superstar athlete. Now that this is way back before I came here, but there's no doubt that he was a phenomenal, accomplished, multi-sport athlete. I think he got more of his publicity, obviously, when he was in the Big Apple and with some of the other clubs that he was. If I close my eyes and you ask me name an icon in San Diego Padre history, it's Tony Gwynn more than it is anybody else.
Oh yeah.
If you talk about personality and a guy who's the most unique leader, I close my eyes, and even though he was here for a short window, Ken Caminetti's impact as a leader and a clubhouse guy and a third baseman was phenomenal till he broke down and obviously sadly passed away because he had so many demons with substance abuse issues. But those are really the two marquee guys. Winfield, he's hardly ever here. He's not. I don't think people really view him as a Padre anymore. Just like they don't view Steve Garvey as a Padre, and Garvey hit the biggest home run in the history of Padre baseball to get him into the first World Series against the Chicago, by beating the Chicago Cubs. So the homegrown guys who've been here for an extended period of time and have been few and far between are really the cornerstones of the franchise. And it's not Manny Machado, and it's surely not Juan Soto. And like I said, the landscape of our game has changed so much that I don't know what it's like in the Yankee clubhouse or the Mets clubhouse. It may be the same, but I was really bothered that this thing were a bunch of independent contractors this year and a couple of years ago when they absolutely blew a pennant race and never even made the playoffs. To me, it's not what baseball should be. And I said on talk shows I've been on out here, you look at the Philadelphia Phillies in the playoffs, the Phillies and Bryce Harper are everything that the Padres and Manny Machado were not. And, the players' retort down out here in San Diego was, hey, look at the back of my baseball card. That came from Machado. The back of your baseball card is you've been the captain of two teams in the last 3 years that absolutely choked away all their opportunities to go into postseason and make baseball special in October in San Diego. That's what the back of your baseball card shows. So it's too bad because Manny's a hell of a player, but Manny's all about Manny. And I kind of fear that Juan is all about Juan and the statistics and Scott Boras, and just what baseball's become.
Yeah. All right. Well, and you mentioned Bryce Harper, and we're going to segue this into the next thing we're about to do, which is he rolled up in a basketball jersey to show like love for the city or whatever. I don't remember what the purpose was, which was cool. Right. So we are, and by the way, Lee, thank you so much for spending time with us. I mean, I know you've been all around the country and you've been on the radio forever. It means so much to me that the dude that I used to listen to on my drive to work was willing to hang out in a webcam and talk baseball for a little bit with us. We're gonna make fun of some NBA jerseys, and if you want to hang out for that, Lee, you can. If you got to run, that's totally fine too. It's totally it's like I said, I'll give you the option. But yeah, this has been pretty awesome. I'm definitely All right.
Well, stay in touch. I'm around. We'll try to wedge into the schedule. I just came back because I just did my hour and a half Thursday podcast. So if you like sports, check my podcast. It's on YouTube, like yours.
It's good. It's good.
Lee Hacksaw Hamilton Sports. You'll like it. You'll check the website. You'll enjoy that too. But good to talk to you. And listen, put it in the book, and maybe down the road we can do it again.
I would love that so much. But we'll check in on you later in the winter if anything big happens.
Thank you so much.
Suck. Thank you. Hey, we'll talk again, guys. My pleasure.
Have a good one, man.
Take care. Bye-bye.